Hi, I'm Stuart and welcome to the channel. Well, we had a lovely hot summer here in the north of England, so much so that it caused drought conditions. But now it seems to have changed and we've got a lot of cold and rainy weather. I'm still hopeful of getting out sometime before Christmas, but for the moment we're stuck in the garage. So my thoughts were starting to turn to what we can do with Rita and our winter projects. Now, one of the issues with Rita is the suspension is very crude and basic, built down to a price. The front forks are 38mm Paiolis, and a lot of trials bikes of the time use them, but these are unadjustable and not able to be changed much at all. Even the spring rate, I can't get a replacement set of springs for it. So if we're going to do anything to it, we're going to need to move to one of the better sets of Paioli 38mm. I say lots of trials bike use them around this period, and most of them have damping control and changeable springs. So I think we'll look for a set of those to graft onto the front of Rita. Once we do that, of course, it's going to show up the ollie shock at the back as again being very crude and poor quality. So I think we need to upgrade that to a better quality shock to try and match the improvement we're going to make to the front. I think over this winter we'll also have a look at this seat. The cover on it is now cracked and splitting, and it's always been really uncomfortable. So I think while the bike's apart, we'll get this off and send it to a local upholsterer for a new cover and maybe some different quality foam underneath there. Right, we're back in the garage again, and this time we're going to tackle the left fork leg. Now this is the one that has the spring in it. I'm really interested to find out what the rate of the spring is inside here, because being quite a lardy bloke, I need a strong spring, so the question of what's already in there is key for me. So first thing I'm going to do is back off the preload on it. Now there's actually no tension on the spring because we took the bolt out of the bottom last time, but if I take the preload off, it'll just help me when I put it back together again. Oh, it's already backed all the way out. That saved me a job. Right, let's start pulling them apart. First job, as with the others, is take out the old seals. Like the previous ones, these look in pretty good order. There's the dust cap, and then the retaining clip. And find the stars bit. There we go. Retaining clip. Again, really good condition. And then again we'll use the tube as a slide hammer to just release the seal. Very good. So like on the right leg, we're going to check these bushes for condition. Again, not shiny, no copper showing through. It's been reasonably good condition. We'll see if that's any good. Like last time, we'll put them back into the bore and just check them to see if they're holding the fork tube stiff. And the bottom one, yeah, same as the last time. No shiny bits, no wear marks. But we'll check it just to make sure that this the fork leg hasn't got worn out. Right, next job is to take the spring out. Right, I've set up the fork leg in some soft jaws in my vise. I'm not crushing it too hard. And the end cap here is actually a 27, which is lucky because that's common size for rear wheel spindles. So I just happen to have a spanner that will fit that. Now, the problem is going to be getting enough. Yeah, it's just turning there. I can't. We'll just get a hammer and see if we can shock it. No, that's not working either. Have another think. Now normally I would advise the best way of getting a fork cap out is to actually leave them in the yokes on the bike. Because we can't do this because my other forks are in the bike. So we're going to substitute for that. Instead we've got a hose clamp here of the right size. I put some tape around the fork tube so it doesn't get any scratches on it. Make sure that's good and tight. And hold that down while we apply some pressure. Ow! And watch out for your fingers. There we go. Now the spring under here was probably still under tension, so we'll just watch out when we get near the end. Keep my thumb on the top so that we don't suddenly fire the fork cap across the garage. You learn these things after years of hunting for fork caps in odd parts of the garden. Oh, no pressure at all. Right, so that's the fork cap out. Right, I think the problem we were having with this cap is there's a bit of rust in the threads, so we'll put some Scotch-Brite over that and give it a good clean up before we put it back together. So to dismantle the rest of the forks, first of all we have a spacer, and in this case we have a second spacer. Now this bottom spacer has a metal end cap to it to stop it being worn away by the spring. Next comes the spring, and then we can take the damper out. Now there's a little metal foot we have to take off the damper first, and then it just slides straight out. Yeah, there's a little bit of grittiness there, bit of dirt in the bottom, so a good clean out and that should be all good to go. Now, the spring preload, by the way, we will adjust that when we get onto the bike and we want to set the preload for our weight and the new spring that we might have in it. Talking of which, I'm hoping there's some numbers somewhere on this spring to tell me what the spring rate is. And of course there isn't. So I understand that you can actually work out the spring rating by measuring the coils and the thickness of the thing. So I'll get my calipers and do some calculations, and let's get back to you. Well, that was interesting. When I took the measurements of the spring and put it into a calculator online, I got a spring rate of about 6 Newton meters per millimetre for this spring. Now that's very light. It should be around about 8.5 to 9 for this particular model of forks. So I did a cruder test of actually putting weight onto the end of it and seeing how much it deflected, and I came out with about the same figure. So I think this is a very lightweight spring that's been put in there, which I guess explains why there were 2 spacers in there. So I'll order the correct weight for my the correct spring rate for my body weight, and we'll go down to just 1 spacer and then see how it adjusts when we sit on the bike. Right, that's something to do when we put it back together. Right, while we've got the forks in bits, I'm going to check these bushes for any play in them. So we're going to assemble it without any internals, just the fork tube and the upper bush. We're going to check for any play. Now this one is really good, much better than the right leg. So I don't think we need to replace those bushes. Right, the last piece of admin before we do any reassembly is just to check the trueness of the fork tube. So we've got our straight edge again. We'll lie that on it. And just see if there's any gap under the straight edge. Nope, that's nice and straight. So we're all good to go. Right, the new fork springs arrived from Splat Shop. When we compare it to the original, you can see it's quite a bit taller, and also the gauge of the wire is a lot thicker. So that should be much better for my weight. So now we have that, we can start the rebuild. Right, we're going to start the rebuild by putting in the damper rod. Just going to add a little bit of oil around this plastic ring to make sure it doesn't stick. That goes down inside the tube until it comes out the bottom. Then we put on the foot. Hopefully that doesn't fall off when we try to put everything together. Finally, we're going to put it down into the leg. So just put a little bit of oil around that bush. Now the damper rod is in, we're going to try and bolt it into place. So we've got our freshly annealed copper washer and our bottom bolt. We've got our Loctite 243 semi-permanent, non-setting. Just a tiny bit of that. The more you put on, the harder it's going to be when you come to take them apart. Washer on. Should have put the washer on first. And then try and locate the damper rod. Yeah, I've got it, but it's just spinning around inside. So this is where our Heath Robinson device comes in play. This has got the socket on the end which has been cut with a groove in it, and that should hold the damper rod inside. Engage that. Yeah, I can see the bolt turning at the bottom. So now we can just turn the bolt in. And get it nice and tight. Stage 1 is complete. Right, stage 2 is to install all the top bushes and the seals at the top of the fork leg. So we've got our seal driver again. So we start off with top bushing. Again, I'll just add a little bit of oil to this. Make sure it's going to slide against the fork nicely. Knock that into place. Then we're going to do the spacer, the cup that holds the seal, and then the top seal and more oil. And like before, we'll put a little oil around the top of the fork leg, down the leg, just to stop it snagging. Open end down. ease it on. Knock that into place. And when we can see the ring for the clip, we know we're in the right place. Right, next in is the retaining clip. Make sure we seat that right down into its groove. Doesn't help when you've got slippery fingers. Make sure we push that all the way down so it clicks into place. Very good. Finally, we put on the dust cover. Again, let's get it nicely lubed up. Slide it over the top. Just knock it into place with our seal driver. Very good. Right, the next job is to put the oil in the forks. Now, Paioli themselves give you an air gap measurement with the fork spring in, and that makes it very difficult to measure because with the fork spring in, it sits above there, so you can't actually measure the air gap down from the edge. But thankfully, Splat Shop have done the work for us again, and they've given us a measurement of 140 millimeters without any spring in place. So we've got 350 cc's roughly of oil ready. Again, we've got our probe. I've set this to 150, and as you remember, it's got the blue line at the end there to tell us where 10 millimeters is. So that's when we're up to the blue line, we set at 140 millimeters depth. So let's get on and fill these up. Right, so that's our initial 350 in, so let's work the forks a little bit. Get any air bubbles out of the damper. That's feeling good. So now we can start measuring. Right, I've been adding and subtracting oil, and I'm right onto the line now, so we know that this is good. Now, the oil level in this fork isn't so critical because, as I say, there's no damping in here, so it's just to give it something to move on and a little bit of air spring at the top. Speaking of springs, that's the next job. Pull the fork up and put the spring in. And the spacer, and remember the metal side goes down to stop it wearing against the spring. And then we're going to put the cap on. Now, I've taken the O-ring off when we gave the threads a clean, so we'll put the O-ring back on. It's very slippery is that tube now. Again, this O-ring looks to be in good condition, so no reason to change it. Roll that into the groove at the top. And finally we screw this into the top. I'm just going to check now. There is just a little bit of movement there. before the preload ring connects with the spring. So I think I'll just need to put a little spacer in the top there to take up the slack. Right, hopefully we've resolved this preload issue. What I did was I put the main spacer in, and then I put washers in until the spring stopped rattling around. Now I've measured those washers at 8mm deep. What I've done is I've taken the second spacer that came with the bike and I've cut a ring off that's 8mm deep. So now that will just sit in there. When we tighten up our cap, it should just put pressure onto the spring, enough so that it won't rattle around. And then once we get on the bike, we'll use the preload adjuster on the top to actually apply preload. So effectively what we're setting it here is at 0 preload. Yeah, and there's no movement there, it's just starting to touch the spring. So another fork done. Let's move on to something else. So I hope you enjoyed watching, and that's all from me. Until the next time.